Well, why don't we get started? Thank you all for doing these, for joining us. We've been doing these initially once a week. We decided to take a break for a couple of weeks. We got feedback from the deans. Our students are zoomed out. Let's give them a breather. And then Mark Lewis and other deans suggested let's do it by college because we can make the networking more relevant, especially with alums and friends that graduated from that college. So what we typically do is first just field any questions, take your temperature, see how life is going these days, food, residence life, safety. Kim Geyer is with us too. Kim's been our co-host to date, our Vice President of Student Affairs, and Mark Lewis will play a co-host role too. So Mark and Kim, anything you'd like to add?
Thanks for joining. Oh, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
I was going to say the same thing. Thanks to everyone for joining. This is a really great turnout. This is exciting.
So and we've got some alums we'll introduce later on and ask them for words of wisdom. There's Patti St George, who was with us last year, among others. So we'll hang on for a bit, Patti. We're going to ask them each what words of wisdom do they wish somebody would have told them when they were in their student shoes. So floor is open. What questions do you have?
I know some folks had sent questions in, had actually written some questions out. So if you've done that, feel free to go ahead and ask your question.
You can do it in the chat room, or you can unmute yourself and ask directly.
Can we talk a little bit about graduation? I know we got an email today for the class of 2020, kind of talking about how we're changing things up from the original December graduation we're going to have. I was just wondering what's going to be the outcome. I'm in the MBA program. I'm supposed to walk hopefully in May of 2021. But I was wondering if we could kind of talk a little bit more on what's that situation looking like for class of 2020.
We don't have the results compiled yet, so that's where we'd welcome your input, and we're basically going to go with the wishes of the class, so long as we can ensure safety. Hoping we get some good news in the near future, either on a vaccine or a therapeutic, but December 19th is also fast approaching, and how widely distributed any vaccine or therapeutic is going to play a role too.
Okay, so pretty much the chances of us walking in December is looking pretty slim for right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't take the opposite side of that bet, Spencer.
Okay.
What's your gut tell you?
I'm praying. I really want to walk. So yeah. My gut's saying I'm holding out hope.
Okay. Optimism's a good thing. And thanks in advance for filling out the survey. Okay, we've got a question from Faith. Kim, this may be from you, wondering how things will work when we all come back from Christmas break. Will everybody come back, have to do the 2-week quarantine again, and be online for the first 2 weeks? We are looking right now at starting the spring semester a week later than normal, just so we allow for more time after the holidays, allow for less overlap with the flu season. And the deans are discussing with our provost whether we take out spring break and maybe create some catch-up days throughout the spring semester. From the peers we're talking to, that seems to be the model that's emerging. In terms of quarantining, that'll very much depend on what the state requirements are. Right now, those are still in place. States get added or taken off the list on a pretty regular basis. And it'll also depend on testing, how widely available. Meeting on Friday with an alum of ours who's been leading the team at the U of R to develop a $5 test that just got FDA approval last week. It's an antigen-based test, and so far they've tested it on just symptomatic people. We have to get a sense how well it works for asymptomatic people. Existing antigen tests have a 15 to 20% false negative rate with asymptomatic individuals. So it will also depend on how testing proceeds and how available and how quick the turnaround times are. So Kim, what would you add?
I would just add that we are working out a proposal now about moving in, so the details and logistics of that. I do expect that it will be pretty similar, and it will have to be, given what President Zupan just mentioned about, we have to follow the New York State guidelines. So some students we expect will still have to quarantine. So we'll have to work through those details. But we're working on that proposal now, and we hope to be able to have that information out to students and everyone else as soon as possible.
And we had the first 2 weeks online largely because the list of states kept changing so much that we wanted to leave ourselves enough cushion. If it's more stable as a situation, what some schools have done is required proof of a test upon arriving to campus and not being able to come to campus if you haven't had a test taken in either 2 days or 3 days prior. So if we have more assurance that we can accomplish that successfully, it may mean that less online at the beginning. So number of fluid factors still at play. Mark, you've been on the discussions with the deans. What's your sense, the outcome?
My sense is the same as you're saying now. I think the inclination is probably to start a week later, and probably the first 2 weeks end up being online as we did now. And probably the notion of spring break as we know it is not a safe plan to send students, to let students go to all kind of places, mixing with students from all kind of universities, sort of seems like not the safest thing to do. So my sense is, where yours is, our next conversation as deans is Monday. I think the faculty senate's going to be involved in some discussions on Friday. So I think it's going to be, my thinking is consistent with yours, but the decision is not made yet.
We'll let you know as soon as we can lock in on a final plan. And the norm far and away this fall was to take out the winter break, finish by Thanksgiving. There were some outliers like Geneseo that was going to have students come back after Thanksgiving. And I think on Monday they announced, or over the weekend, that they're not going to have people come back and they're just going to finish online because of the risk of people going to another place and then bringing the bug back with them. Other questions? Do we have to move out everything in our dorms when we leave? Kim, I'm glad you're here.
Well, so the reason we came up with that plan, just so that you know, actually there were several reasons. One, we were hoping that students would pack light because we weren't sure how the semester was going to play out. We had our hopes, but we weren't sure. So hopefully you all packed lightly, and that worked. But you're obviously moved in now, so that reason is behind us. Another reason is to make sure that we can clean the residence hall spaces. And then the last reason was because just worst case scenario, if we had to move out before we were planning, we wanted to make sure that students could take their stuff. They were already planning to take their stuff with them. I don't know if any of you left things behind when you left in March, but it was not a wonderful process for anyone because students had to figure out either they had to put their stuff in storage or had to figure out how to come back and pick up their stuff or what to do with it. And in some cases that was months later. So that was really the reason. We don't want you to go through that again. So we're hoping that with the plans to move out already, it will be a smoother process. But we are keeping an eye on how the semester is going. And if we are able to change that plan, we would be happy to do so. We're just not there at this point yet.
And these last 2 weeks have just been incredibly challenging, and we've come to better appreciate how quickly things can spread. And we can't emphasize enough the importance of taking the safety protocols incredibly seriously. Our first 1,300 tests were all negative, roughly. And Kim and I were just wondering if there was something faulty in the Upstate Medical Center system. We got our first positive last Thursday. It was from a symptomatic individual. If you're symptomatic, we have an antigen test in-house that is very reliable. That person tested positive. We had another person that was also developing symptoms. We picked up a couple more on Friday, and the first person that tested positive was in a pool of 12 by coincidence that had been taken last Thursday. So initially, when that pool came back, it takes them 24 hours to do the turnaround time. It looked like there were 2 people positive in that pool of 12. Next step we did with the second identified individual, we did an antigen test. It proved negative, and then a PCR-based test, which is incredibly reliable for asymptomatic individuals. That individual ended up testing negative, so we could take him off the list. But we picked up another individual testing symptomatically. As of yesterday, we were at 4. We also on Monday conducted 129 tests, so 13 different pools of at least 12, in one case smaller number. We found out late last night that 2 of those came back positive. So now what the Upstate Medical Center is doing is they do something called reflex testing. You send them the saliva of everybody in the pool plus their combined saliva. We're expecting those results. Is it just 2 across those 2 pools, or are there multiples in either of the pools or both of the pools? We put people in isolation until we find out whether they've tested positive on this reflex test. So right now we have 24 students across those 2 pools as we're looking to identify who. And as soon as we find out, then we begin contact tracing through our wellness center as well as the Allegheny Department of Health. So I expect we're going to put out an announcement later tonight if we get the results back. Right now, the best way to phrase it is we have at least 6 active positives. New York State, if you get up to 100 in a 14-week specified period, or if you have a 5% positivity testing rate, then you have to go on pause for 2 weeks. But we also have to be mindful of how much space we have for quarantining. There's set guidelines that we're operating based on federal, state, and local. How close were you to somebody? Was it a class more than 60 minutes in length? Our county has been very stringent on over 60-minute classes. And then how long, too, were you proximate to a particular individual if it's not a class? Our first 6 cases appear to be concentrated in a particular athletic team, as well as people living together, which seems to be the norm, what we're hearing from peer schools. But it's now real important that we just very in a fulsome manner trace the right people, make sure the ones that may still be suspected carriers are either quarantining, and if they're testing positive, that they're isolating. And we're also working on expanding our tracing capacity, how much quarantining space we have, and how much isolating space we have. But we need all of your help to be all in. We heard from a student, for example, that they were still in a particular house, so people were going to throw a party this past weekend. And it just, you never know who else somebody's been interacting with. Did they go home for a family special occasion, and what they bring back with them? So err on the side of being cautious. Kim, anything you'd add to that?
No, I think you hit all the points. Thanks.
I had a question of how long would it take for like the contact tracing? I mean, because I just get concerned with the fact that I work with people with compromised immune systems, and I get worried that it would take a few days, and then I go into work, and God forbid something happened, it'd come back on me.
Right. Yeah, the contact tracing is done within 24 hours, but we've been keeping it even shorter than that. The challenge becomes, depending on how many cases at once and how many people have to be contacted. But for example, one case took about 7 hours on Friday, and then it took less time as we got more cases. So it does kind of depending on how many people are involved, how big the classes are, how much contact that person has had, but generally it's within 24 hours and even shorter than that.
Okay, if it comes to a point where the COVID cases are like, growing faster, if we don't feel comfortable, like for instance, because I work with people with compromised immune systems, if we don't feel comfortable being on campus, what's the protocol for that?
To work with your relevant faculty. Most of the business classes, or a lion's share, they're online options, but work with your faculty on how you stay up to speed with the material in the best possible way. And just a shout out to our student affairs staff in particular, because they're putting in long hours right now on the tracing, the physical plant, the public safety team, the Dean of Student Wellbeing, Kim, and it's tough for the students that are isolated. You can imagine if you've got to be confined to a particular space, still keep up with your classes. We've had some initial issues making sure the food gets delivered on time, the quality of the food. So we're learning how to do these protocols in the most effective way, and we'll get better at it the more we do. But hopefully we don't have to do too many more.
Thank you.
And I would add, Kendra, if you live on campus and you're making that decision to leave campus, just be sure to let Residence Life know that you're leaving your residence space, and also dining, so that we can work through that if you have a meal plan as well.
Okay, I live on campus, so.
Okay.
Tahir's question, why do a COVID test? The first period was mandated because we were trying to do comprehensive testing across our entire student body. Students have been primarily affected by COVID. When we look at other campuses, they're the lion's share of the cases, very few employees. So we wanted to focus on that vector. Now we've gone, as of this week, into surveillance testing. We're doing 192, at least 10% of our student population. And we're trying to pick off individual dorms, particular athletic teams, in addition to some random testing. So basically we can keep our ear to the ground. If we need to expand beyond 192, we'll do that. And if we need to expand to faculty staff, we'll do that as well. But it's we're watching it day by day, and but we need your help on the second test and our staff will work with you if you've got a class during the specified time. We're going to be flexible to make sure we find you a time that works that day.
We're getting a number of questions about the 60-minute rules and 60 minutes, what that means for classes. Because the county's health department guidance is different for classes that are longer than 60 minutes with regard to the possibility of isolating the faculty and the students in the class, we have been prepared mentally from the beginning of the semester for what happens if we need to shorten our in-person classes to 60 minutes. And then even the more extreme case, what happens if we go on a 2-week pause of having actual in-person classes. So each faculty member has made a plan for their class and there's a particular question about the MBA classes that go 2 hours and 40 minutes. So it's up to each faculty member how they handle the class. From the MBA professors I've talked to, it's not possible to do 2 hours and 40 minutes worth of class in under 60. And so I suspect that many of them will switch to an online format so that you get the full value of your class each week, but have to do it in a remote format and not be able to be in a classroom. The county won't let us do 59 minutes, take a 5-minute break, and then come back in, and then take a break and come back in. That doesn't count. So we're kind of constrained by the guidance from the health department, and also our desire to minimize the students that might be at risk of being placed in isolation.
The way the rules work, there's one set of guidelines at the state level. The county can then be more stringent. It can't be less stringent. So this thing is very county by county. The 1-hour rule, for example, hasn't been applied in Monroe County for universities and colleges in the Rochester area. We have one of the strictest counties. Probably there are a couple others in the state that are being as strict as ours. When Alfred State got their first positive case about 4 weeks ago, It just turned out that the student was in two classes that were over 60 minutes in length. And I think they had to put something like 64 people in quarantine. In most other counties, it's who's sitting next to you if it's over a set period of time, not the entire class involved. But that's the world we're having to operate in.
I also saw a question about next semester. So I can't speak for the other deans, but for the College of Business, we are planning and preparing for classrooms and class times as if we will be all in person. But we are also, so classes will be scheduled at regular times, but we are providing an option for students to take classes remotely. We have 8 classrooms in the Olin building that are set up so that we can have students online as well as in class in a single interactive session. And we are planning for all of our classes to be delivered that way, except for some that are going to be 100% online. So for those people that are wondering, what if I need to stay away from Alfred next semester? Again, for the College of Business courses, you can take your classes remotely. We have that covered. I can't speak to humanities courses or courses in other colleges because I've not seen their planning schedule for next semester yet.
And Mark, we've got a question. Might there be more 1-hour classes, MBA classes next year, meeting more frequently, or next term?
So our MBA director, Teresa Gunn, is on the call, and I will let her handle that because she works with her faculty on that one.
All right, so the plan right now, and I sent this message to Carl, you'll want to check with your MBA professors for this current semester to see what they're doing, the in-person ones, what they're doing for the 1 hour, and also to get the other hour and 40 minutes in. Next semester, we haven't made a determination on that yet, but we will, depending on how things look come January.
Joe Springstart, you asked the question. Right now, the tentative plan is January 25th. That's the start. And we don't know, in all honesty, what rules will still remain for the spring. Somebody asked about sports. We had a call with Empire 8 presidents. We just received some guidance from the NCAA, amount of testing that needs to be done. It's pretty comprehensive. It very much hinges on, are there going to be enough PCR-based tests? People are worried with antigen-based tests, which right now the NCAA has promoted, that may not be as reliable. And so if you have asymptomatic individuals in close contact, that's likely to promote the spread. I'm not sure what the NFL is doing. You might have seen that they had their first outbreak with the Tennessee Titans, and the Vikings that they were playing also went into lockdown. I think that the NFL is using an antigen-based test, but I need to go do some more research on that. And so PCR availability, or if there's a more reliable antigen-based test, will probably be the deciding factor. Right now, we're still planning on doing everything in the spring, but a lot's still in play.
I've got a few questions that came in privately that I'll cover briefly. First question, how does the College of Business plan to continue to push education into new technologies and ways of business that are being seen in recent years? One of the big trends we have now is the growth of data, the amount of proliferation of data. And we've added the new major and minor in data analytics and business analytics. Those will be helpful no matter what a student's major is to minor with analytics. But that's really a trend that we're seeing. Another trend is the growing number of jobs in healthcare management. So we brought back our healthcare management major and minor. Another question, does the College of Business intend to expand its current practices into educating students on the ever-changing role of business in the digital world? And so, yes, data analytics is part of that. We have a new course in digital and social media marketing, and a new course that's being developed by Greg Pock that combines data visualization with economics and statistics. So that course is going to be taught for the first time next semester. Another question, how does the College of Business plan to adapt to the post-COVID environment in terms of online and in-person courses? That's a very interesting question and one that we've thought about. And actually our response to COVID and the teaching of HyFlex has really advanced us. So what I see when we come out of this is that we will be able to have, again, we've got 8 classrooms in Nolan that are set up where we can have students in the classroom and students remotely. And when we're out of the COVID environment and we in Alfred can be back in the classroom again, which is where we love to be, we can also have students that have, say, got a 2-year degree from the Monroe Community College or Genesee Community College or Jamestown Community College who want to complete their degree, but they don't want to move to Alfred to do that. We can include them in our courses as remote students. And the practice that we're having now with the HyFlex classes and serving our students who are not in the local area now is giving us the foundation for being able to serve a greater group of students after COVID. So a very, very insightful question, and I think a great opportunity for the College of Business. Let's see, another private question. What classes do you suggest in the business administration field to help with jobs? Oh boy, it depends on what job you want to do. I would say that more so than the individual classes that you pick, which are important to choose based on your by your desire, but getting internships, paid or unpaid, getting experience, building your network are some of the keys to getting your job. And I'm sure we'll be hearing from the alumni even more keys to getting your job. Another question, if someone is struggling to find a job or trying to start their own business, what would you suggest they do? What tips would you give them? Again, internships are very helpful, paid or unpaid. We have 2 classes now in entrepreneurship and a goal to start incubating student businesses, combining engineering, business, and art students. So getting involved in growing businesses from the ground up. The other thing that I would suggest, that a new program that's wonderful, is the leadership program with Dr. Diana McGuire. No matter what your major is, business or not business, no matter what specialty of business, learning to be a more effective leader is going to be a tremendous help for you. We had another private question that somebody said, is it true? I heard that Corning Incorporated employs more graduates from Alfred University than other universities. And does Alfred University have a great relationship with Corning? So I think Mark, I'll let you answer that one.
Latest survey, I think 462 employees or grads of ours. And it's not just engineers. It's a lot of business grads that work in other capacities at the firm. The engineers there average at least 3 patents per capita, so they're a pretty creative bunch. And yeah, it's a Fortune 500 firm right in our backyard. Anything we can do to deepen the relationship. We'll introduce you to some alums here shortly too. I would suggest networking with people like that because they were once in your shoes. And there's an old saying, the last time you want to build a network is when you need it. So take opportunities like this to develop connections. And then when you get to juncture, should I take internship A versus internship B? They're potentially sounding boards, so you can develop your own board of advisors in a sense. And certain people's advice will ring more true to your own self, and thanking those people and then keeping in touch with them, a really good strategy. And data analytics, there was a study 2 years ago of MBA grads. In that particular year across the US, 75% had gotten jobs related to data analytics. So finding areas that the wind's at your back, like the health professions, like data analytics, like knowing the language of business, which I saw a comment about accounting, all good things to have at your back.
Another question came in privately. Are you concerned with oversight on courses taught by adjunct faculty in a purely online environment? Yes, I am concerned about the quality of every course taught by every professor, online or in person, adjunct or not. We have had some wonderful adjunct instructors teaching purely online. We have had adjunct instructors where we got feedback early in the semester it wasn't going as well, and spent time with those people to help them be more effective. Actually have flown those professors to Alfred pre-COVID to meet with students face-to-face to start relationships and build the communication. And we have had folks that we worked with during the semester, the outcomes, the student satisfaction. Although the students got good grades and passed the course, the students simply weren't happy. And we simply never asked those adjuncts to teach for us again. So we're concerned about the quality and delivering a very high quality experience to all our students, no matter who the professor is and no matter what the format of the class is.
Should we start the alumni introductions?
Sounds great.
Okay, Teresa, do you want to introduce Nick?
I can definitely do that. So Nicholas Sugg is a graduate from just a couple of years ago, and he's accomplished a lot already. He was in the accounting major program at the undergrad level, and he organized his schedule and finished his 150 credit hours at the undergraduate level, which takes a lot of planning to do. He has already passed his CPA exams. He has CPA after his name, so it's Nicholas Sugg CPA, and he comes to us from Freed Maxick, and he's also, let's see, he was the captain of the equestrian team. He ran the workout programs for them, which a lot of the students didn't care for. He's a sleigh driver, but he does a great job. So Nick, I'll let you take it from here.
All right, so good. I'm Nick Sugg, as Professor Gunn introduced me. Graduated about 2 years ago in 2018. And currently I'm working for Freed Maxick. It's a CPA firm out of Buffalo, New York. I work out of the Batavia office, so a little different, but there's multiple offices. At the moment, I was actually trying to answer one of Professor Rodriguez's questions here on any thoughts or advice on the future of working remotely. And I think for a lot of you, working remotely is not going to change. And you're actually getting a better start now than maybe I was given when I first, happened with COVID. So you get a few more years, whether you're in your grad program or your undergrad. As much as it's maybe not the funnest, I think in the workforce coming later, this is how it's going to be. For my own experience, I could tell you that in terms of those internships, seeing online, they are starting to pop up right now. But for all jobs, working remotely, we just hired someone from Texas, a New York firm, and they are not expected to ever come to New York. They're going to stay working in Texas. A company, one of the top 4 big accounting firms actually let this individual go, and they're a very knowledgeable individual. And we just picked them up because it's talent. And we're hiring talent in all different states, and we're not expecting anyone to move in many cases. And I think that's going to be a benefit for you in terms of internships and future jobs, because if you have family in Virginia and you want to live in Virginia, then you can live in Virginia but still maybe work at Corning or somewhere in New York if that's what you want. I mean, every company is different. You're going to have to ask that in those interviews. What is the possibility to stay and work remotely? The learning curve, like you're experiencing now, is going to be a little different working remotely than if you were in person. A question might take a few more minutes longer over a phone call or a Zoom meeting than it would maybe face-to-face. But a pro that I have found of working remotely is that you have that documentation there. So if you ask a question one-on-one verbally and you go and you work on it, you might forget if you didn't bring a pen and paper or something. Now it's in an email or a recorded meeting, and you can always refer back to it. So I think that's always a plus, definitely in the remote environments. I think as Professor Lewis talked about the different degrees that Alfred's added since I've been there. I mean, only 2 years, and it sounds like, you know, data analytics, healthcare, all these other sectors. I think it's funny because my firm actually gave me this book. I had it sitting right on my desk, and you mentioned it, but it's a data analytics guide that I'm going to start reading. I haven't started yet. I think I'm on page content, but so I think that's data analytics is the next big thing. Every CPE, which stands for continued professional education, that I have to go through for my firm, they talk about data analytics every time. And that is where we're going, because as companies grow, there's a lot of data out there, and it's harder for you to analyze one invoice. You want to analyze a population of invoices or a population of certain things. There's still detailed tests required where you're actually looking at maybe 1 or 2 invoices, but you are looking at a lot of data, and you want to see trends, and you want to see how things are interrelated. And data analytics, yes, there's a lot of jobs that just are data analytics, but it just helps you in a mindset to be able to understand and know how to look at something. It's going to help you as a manager, as a leader, to figure out how to best think and problem solve against certain things. I think one thing I wanted to also say is you're not going to know anything coming out of school, and you shouldn't be afraid of the job. Freed Maxick actually hired me on my second application, not my first. So I think if you want the job bad enough, you just have to keep applying, but you shouldn't hold yourself back if they ask for more years of experience than you might have. I think even Freed Maxick, the job I applied to at the time, had 1 year experience, and I had none. So you just have to try it. And working remotely, it can be your building block, you know, to find maybe that internship in a different state while you're working while you're going through school at Alfred, to just kind of get out there. But use Alfred as your base to your foundation, to your pyramid, and don't stop, you know, learning and everything else after college. Just because you graduate doesn't mean that, you know, you don't have to hit the books anymore. Maybe after the first few months after you graduate, relax, you know, get through it, but kind of find what you want next, you know, and where you want to go with your career. Whether you're looking to join a public accounting firm like I am to eventually become CEO of Corning Incorporated, then use it as a building block, but kind of keep looking ahead and don't look short term, you know, because like President Zupan mentioned, it's like if you start looking for your network when you need it, it's too late. So if you stop learning now when you need it, you're going to be behind. Someone else is going to get the job, or you might get let go, which is unfortunate. I think there's also a lot of resources out there too that you just have to research and find. When I first started my job, one of the biggest wastes of time that I had was driving to clients, driving home from clients. I wasted so much time. I got sick of listening to the radio. I got sick of listening to Spotify and Amazon Music. So I downloaded this app called Overdrive. And what it is it's a free app connects your library card to any library in the nation, or to your, you can just sign up with your library card. So my library is Buffalo, New York, so that's where it is. And I listen to free audiobooks while I drive. And I might not be driving now, but it's a fun free app. At first, when I started using Amazon Audible, but now I stopped paying the money, and I just get it for free. And I get the same quality of books, the the same book actually, just out of a library. And I didn't know about that till I did some research. And I think one of the biggest things that I'm going to leave it with, because I know I don't want to take up all the time, is that you need to find a hobby. Like Professor Gunn said in the beginning, I was on an equestrian team. I started my own clubs at Alfred. I was in many clubs at Alfred. It was a great time. When I graduated, I came home to Buffalo and I said, I had all this time. I filled all my time. Now all I'm doing is working. I have no hobbies back here. Nothing that I really kept doing that I did at Alfred. So it took me a while to get back into a groove and find some hobbies. I actually got into rock climbing for a little while, and I started doing some certain things. I mean, the CPA was a big thing, like Professor Gunn said, but I got into rock climbing, still working out, but you might lose your routine when you graduate. So try to find your routine again, try to find a hobby, something that you like, whether it's listening to books, running, going fishing, or anything. Just keep sane with a hobby, especially in this virtual environment. You need to get away from the laptop. You need to shut it down. You need to get away. And the best hobby is something that I think is away from the screen at most cases. But I think that's where I'll leave it with. I know we all have our own little time. So I'm here for questions. And if anyone too wants my contact information for any networking later, then feel free to shoot me a message. Both Professor Gunn and Professor Lewis have it. I think even Professor Lewis has it as well, or Rodriguez. So,
Nick, thank you. And would you be willing to put your email in the chat room so if somebody wants to reach out to you? Like Nick said, his firm is hiring. And just think about COVID-19 and opportunities related to data analytics, how you do more effective tracing and tracking who's been proximate to somebody else for a set period of time. There have been data analytics done, for example, if you're vitamin D deficient, you're at greater risk of contracting COVID-19. So one of the takeaways, make sure you're getting enough vitamin D. My significant other put me onto that, so I'm taking a regular dose every day now. There have been a couple of steroids identified that are why the mortality rate has gone down for COVID-19 is basically a huge data analytics project. What particular steroids for other conditions were people less likely to then contract COVID-19? So let me next turn it over to one of our trustees, Patti St George. She's an '89 graduate, started off in public accounting, but was just at the point where she was going to burn out. And found a traverse within her firm, KPMG, to go into consulting. And now she's one of the most senior partners at KPMG. She's based out of the DC area. She oversees all government-related, especially Defense Department consulting for her firm. And how do you motivate and bring together teams? Doing less travel nowadays, so she's had to accomplish that virtually. And then keep the business line going. She joined our trustees. She chairs our audit committee, and it's become a much more lively committee since Patti took it. Now people are dying to join at 8 o'clock in the morning when this audit committee typically meets in person. She's a very big proponent of common ground and a big supporter in how do we build bridges with each other. Other claims to fame, that she and her husband Cornelius are raising 3 kids in the DC area. Her husband's retired. They collect ornaments from the White House because he used to be part of the Secret Service for the White House and headed up Michelle Obama's detail, and also was the advance person for Bush when Bush went to Notre Dame, because he played, Cornelius played football at Notre Dame, and so had that privilege too. So Kathleen, you were Patti, you were the executive in residence with us about 1.5 years ago. And the watchword that she's given us is an acronym called BLUF, bottom line up front. That don't bury the lead way at the bottom of a PowerPoint slide. You want to, and she instructs all her team members, I want to know up front what the conclusion and then tell me how you got to that conclusion after that. So Patti, thanks for joining us this night.
Well, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
A-okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Yeah, and just to pile on to the bluff bottom line up front, when you brief 3-star and 4-star generals who have very little time to spend with you, and they're running huge military operations around the world, they teach you, get to the point, tell me what your conclusion is, as President Zupan says, right up front. And then if they want to have you explain the rest to them, they might stick around and listen to you. But many times they don't. Many times they're like, okay, I got it, moving on, goodbye, thanks very much. So I think that was something I've learned, that I would just echo to the rest of you is, when you get out into the workforce and you're in the business world, depending on the organization you go to, people are really busy. And so how you spend time with people, working with people, communicating with people is critically important, because what you'll notice is everybody's got a job, everybody's got different things to do, and time is precious. And so you want to be respectful of their time as well as your own time, because the better way you use your time, the better you're going to be serving in your role with whatever organization you go to. But a couple things that I wanted to pile on to the previous conversations that were being mentioned is, I did want to pile onto the data conversation, because what we say in today's economy, in today's world, is data is an asset. Years ago, it was not. It is now considered an asset, and those who have harnessed the ability to manage, get and use and forecast and do all of those sorts of things actually have the competitive advantage and are going to outpace the other organizations, whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in retail, whether you're in hospitality, whether you're in defense. In defense, in my world, if they're not using data analytics to figure out how the adversaries of Russia and China who are trying to take us out, they're going to win. So those who have a command of the data, that is an asset. So as a business student, it is critically important for you to try to bake into your curriculum anything you can around data. My son is a freshman in a business school, and I've put him onto this thing called data literacy as a program. So we are making every single consultant in KPMG, US-wide, go through a data literacy program, because we feel every single consultant has to have some foundational, fundamental understanding of data. Really, we call it data literacy. They have to be literate in data and data analytics in any profession that you're going to go into nowadays. So that's probably one of the big things I would pile on. And the other major trend that we're seeing is digital transformation. So I would say what CEOs are saying today across any kind of company that you're working at is just technology is disrupting everything they've grown up, built their organizations on, and how they do business. Whether you're an accounting firm and you're automating everything you audit, or if you are, you think about businesses like Airbnb and some of these others that now exist and they're completely online, and these didn't exist 5, 6, 10 years ago. So you have complete industries being wiped out because what they're calling digital transformation. So understanding the interrelationship between how technology enables what we do every day, our processes, how we do whatever it is you do in an organization, is really the other major facet that we're seeing. And the third major facet that we're seeing that I think is really important for folks to understand is culture and people. And now with COVID, what we're finding is it's so important to understand what motivates you as an employee, what motivates teams and makes them productive, makes them want to work together. So those are sort of the big 3 themes that we're seeing. And so as you're thinking about what it is you're taking from a curriculum perspective, what other clubs and other things you're getting involved with, if you can get exposure to things like that, that is going to help you, because the pace of change is so rapid. Every industry that you will have an opportunity to go into is changing that rapidly. And so the other thing I would just say, some other points to pile on to President Zupan's comment about what did I wish people said to me? What did I wish I learned and knew when I was coming up the ranks like you guys are? That I learned a decade or two later that I wish someone had told me is relationships are probably the most critical thing that you have to really cherish and take care of. So the people you work with, the people that you formulate, any sort of relationship, because you think about it, anything you're going to do in the future, you're going to work as part of a team. You're going to be part of, whether you're a teacher, you're part of a school system. Whether you're an accounting firm, you're going to be part of a team of accountants. If you're in consulting, you're going to be a team of consultants. So everything you do is going to be in a team environment. And I know a lot of the curriculum and things you're doing today are team oriented, and they give you a lot of different case studies and things like that. Hopefully they're giving you that in your, your business classes. Working in teams, working with lots of different people, and having to formulate and work with people you've never worked with before, and quickly understand that this person's good at this person's good at that, and together we can make a really awesome team together, but we got to know what our strengths and weaknesses are. So that, to me, I would say, no matter what you do, whether you go into consulting like I did, whether I went into accounting originally, I have friends that are in all other sorts of professions, law enforcement, you name it, that working in teams is probably the most fundamental thing, which means relationships, working in teams. The other thing I would tell you is, and one of the other folks said it, internships. One of the things that, I'll tell you that we can't teach students, it's very difficult to teach students in a classroom, is you can't teach context. And context is really understanding how organizations and businesses work. How, when you are going to interview and go and get a job somewhere, you're going to be fresh. You're not going to know how that place works. And you're going to have to figure it out. And you're going to have to work with all brand new people and kind of earn your keep and earn your spurs. And part of that, you want to really understand the context of how organizations work. So any chance you get, whether it's a summer job, whether it's an internship, working inside some sort of business oriented type, anything, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's, an accounting firm, whether you can, get into a consulting firm, anything that you can do to get that hands-on experience. One, it helps you differentiate yourself when you want to get interviewed and you're trying to get a job, because we look for that. I hire thousands of people. We look for hands-on experience versus just an academic degree. So I would offer that up as well. The other thing a couple last things I'll say, because I know I want to give folks time, is your social network appearance is critical nowadays. When I came into the workforce, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have any of that stuff. Now people will monitor everything you do on the web, and they will make a determination whether you are have good values, core values, and whether you are a safe employee to hire into their organization. And how you present yourself online, it's all discoverable, nothing sacred. Anything you put out there, you better live with for the rest of your life. You really need to think hard about that. And I would take it very seriously that you do not, take what's on the web as a serious evaluation of you. And remember, when you get into the workforce and, you're interviewing, you're on an interview every day. Every day you go to work, people are evaluating how you act, how you perform, what you say, how you dress, what you do. All of that matters. And as a student, it's not as important as you get out of being a student and into the workforce. Incredibly important. And the last thing I will say is your ability to speak in public in any sort of fashion is critical. You're going to be put into situations where you have to speak in front of groups, you have to speak to your boss, you have to make a compelling case. Your ability to speak crisply, to the point, well thought out, strong presentations, really, really important. You're going to need it in any job you're going to take in the future. And I want to give time for the other folks, so I will pause there because I could go on and on and on, but I will stop. Turn it back over to you.
Patti, thank you for joining us. And if you feel comfortable, please feel free to share your email address so if any student wants to follow up. And my oldest son, who's a second-year MBA student, put me onto this podcast called Planet Money. It's on NPR, and it's economic factoids and some pretty interesting things. What fields are hopping now, what are under the weather. And one of the recent podcasts was on three-point shooting in basketball. When the three-point shot got introduced, very few shots were taken from beyond the arc. It's steadily been growing because people basically did the math that it's 50% more valuable if you could hit it. People had to develop that acumen to shoot, and you wanted more of those people on the team. So much so that shooting either from mid-range has pretty much disappeared. When I was growing up, people would do sky hooks, and nowadays you hardly ever see that. It's either around the basket, right underneath it, or shooting from beyond the arc. So anyway, but another example of data analytics, albeit in sports management. So questions for our Teresa, Mark, do we have any other alums? I know we've had one more that was going to join us, but he runs a huge county in the DC area, and I think he was otherwise occupied with an issue earlier today.
I think Nick and Patti were our two guests that were able to be with us tonight. And I am so delighted that they were both able to be with us. Great, great, great advice, Nick and Patti. Thank you both so much.
Yeah, we promised you 8 o'clock. So any last question? We've got a student senate meeting, I guess it starts at 8 every week. So please join me in thanking Patti as well as Nick. We have a lot of prominent alums. Our College of Business continues to gain high rankings. We made the U.S. News top 100 for the first time a couple of years ago. Washington Monthly recently also gave us very favorable reviews. And there are quite a few distinguished alums. We've been adding accountants in particular. Two of our recent additions, one's an accounting alum who's the CFO at AutoZone, a Fortune 270 firm headquartered in Memphis, Tennessee. And another one, she ran all of hotel real estate for BlackRock. And BlackRock wanted her to move from Florida to manage all their real estate, including homes. But she didn't want to move from Southern Florida. So she recently started a huge consulting firm with BlackRock as the initial big whale client. And a few months ago added her second big whale. So because these firms want to benefit from her expertise, how is COVID going to affect real estate, commercial and residential? So stay safe. Thank you all for joining. Mark, any last words? Teresa, any last words? Or Kim?
No, just thanks all, and looking forward to, for those students in Busy 105, looking forward to your thoughts and reactions on our meeting tonight. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night all.
Good night.
Good night too.